Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here with Blair Black. I'm going to ask you, Blair, the same question I ask everyone, which is what is it like to be you?
It's all good. I love it. Happy, very happy to be me. Very happy to be alive every day. Thank God, so much better than not being here. I'm happy. Um, I wrote a whole book about it, really.
You did?
I did. I guess I wrote, I noticed that, in my life that everybody I knew kind of was miserable, you know? Um, but I've always been, I kind of felt like I was like born happy. I've always been just kind of pumped on life, and you know, despite people calling me, like crazy to my face, like 1,000 times, probably, I didn't.
Yeah.
I never really thought about myself as being crazy. But as I got older, I started to realize, like, okay, I think a large part of the reason why I'm happy is because I don't give a fuck. Um, and ironically, that makes people seem to really like me, which further ironically, I don't give a fuck about.
Mhm.
um, so I thought, and I could see, men especially, but people in the world just not being happy with their lives, and I wanted to do something about it, but I'm crazy, so this was the best that I could do, was to write this book.
And what is the book?
So the book is a psychopath's guide to enlightenment. And if I would have thought about it, I probably would have tried to make it an easier to say title.
Uh-huh. I
Um,
like it though.
I appreciate it. No, I feel like it says what I'm trying to say, but it is when I've noticed when I need like a card or something, because when I tell people like a psychopath's guide to enlightenment, I'm like, damn, you don't even know how to. You don't have the. I can tell you don't have the first clue as to how to spell psychopath. So,
Uh-huh.
but so I wanted to do something, but I'm certainly misanthropic to the core. Um, so I don't want to get my hands dirty, and I thought it'd be better to stand off at a safe distance and write this book about the mindset, basically, that has allowed me to do what I've done and to be a happy person. People my whole life kind of told me I've lived kind of a crazy life in my short life already, and people have always told me you should write a book. You should write a book. Everybody, almost everybody, you should write a book. You should write a book. But like I was telling you, I'm a psychopath. I'm not a narcissist, and I know nobody gives a shit about me personally. I'm going to read a book about what I've done. I don't think that, especially with no name, I don't think that's something that's going to interest people. But I thought that what I could offer is to let them in to the mindset that allowed me to burn bridges and break bonds that most people would find unthinkable, and live my life the way I wanted to.
I
And
love this.
as a result of it, I'm honestly the happiest person I know, maybe the only happy person I know. I'm married to the literal woman of my dreams, and everybody seems to fucking like me. So I wanted to, and I wanted to let people know that that is available to everybody, um, if you can adopt the mindset of not really caring what people think about you and what you should do.
This is great. I'll tell you two things. Number one, I get emails all the time from people being like, "Hey, can you teach me to be more psychopathic? Or do you know if there's a book that teaches
Yeah.
me to be more
I heard one of
psychopathic?"
the dudes the other day. I was like, oh man, this guy. We had like the 2-part series with him on. I gave him like some homework to do, and I thought, hey,
Oh
this is,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Psychopath lessons. Yeah. He emailed me. I haven't had a chance to read it, so maybe there's a third part coming up soon. But yes, and then the other thing is my friend Anne, if you've read the book, she's always being like, "You need to come up with like, teaching people how to be more psychopathic." But I just have kind of like, I don't know, I've never felt like that was my thing. So so I'm
I
so
just
glad that somebody did though.
well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. I just this is not the book anybody wanted me to write. Certainly, of the people that were saying I should write a book, but I thought it would be helpful to know how. And the answer is kind of simple, that just don't, you just can't care. And that, doing your own thing makes people actually respect you more. And if now to put the label on it as psychopathic or whatever, obviously that kind of makes people back up a little bit, but it's the truth. that, that
Yeah.
is the that is the way. Um, and I think, like I said, I think it's available to everybody. And I wanted to write a book that was not about me or my personal experience at all, just about some of the easiest ways I thought you could adopt the mindset and like the most obvious pitfalls to avoid, um,
Hmm.
in life in regards to enlightenment and happiness. Got to start with happiness. I think very few people are happy, let alone enlightened.
Yeah.
And I think I've laid out, I think, a good blueprint as to how you can attain that, obtain that, how you can get
How
it.
you get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So enlightenment, when you use this in the title, is it like any connection to Buddhist enlightenment, or is it like your own version of enlightenment?
Well, I gotta say, reading Siddhartha as a kid certainly put me down the path of enlightenment, or like the thought of enlightenment. But to me, in this instance, enlightenment is strength and wisdom balanced. You
Mhm.
know, it is attaining like a balance in your life. And I think that's why so few people are enlightened, because some people are very strong and some people are very smart, but most are neither, and very few are both. And I think for that reason, very few people are enlightened. And I think it's difficult to balance strength and wisdom because humans exist in this like dual state of human animal, instinctual intellectual,
Mhm.
um, and it's difficult to merge those two sides because your instinctual side is like directly at odds with 21st century morality, you know
Yeah.
and because of it, it's been that our instinctual nature, I think, has been conditioned out of us since birth, basically. um, and when it's basically wants to repress our instinctual selves, or for our intellectual selves, and that repressing one whole side of yourself leads to a very like fractured existence, far away from being able to merge your light and your dark sides to become one whole enlightened person that can see life from that perspective.
Hmm.
um, and I think it's hard for sane people to do, you know, because we are conditioned from birth to repress our instinctual nature. And I think for millions and millions of years, we came up in super violent nature, where being alone in the wilderness was basically a death sentence.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is what created the herd mentality in humans. And the herd mentality basically wants you to split the difference, you know, and you know, please people to not be ostracized from the group and cast out into the wilderness. But that was a long time ago,
Yeah.
and that wilderness is gone. And that social order was dictated by nature, but today's social order, I think, is dictated by generally a group of like, weak, fearful, low consciousness people with a negative worldview who I don't think really have your best interest in heart, at heart.
Right.
But we still bend over backwards to please these people that hate us. And that basically has you constantly choosing against your own interests, which is genetically, and evolutionarily the right thing to do as a human, as a herd animal, but it fucks your life up, and
Yeah.
as a psychopath, I've been able to choose in my own interests, and not have to really care about the best interests of the group. And it set me free to live, like I said, live my life how I want to, burn whatever bridges I want to, walk away from careers and opportunities, and basically live my life how I wanted to. And it's resulted, in me being pumped on life. It's all good to be me. I enjoy it.
Yeah. So, like I think of the word iconoclast, like to live classically, to live like a life that's uniquely yours. You're not really living it for other people. You're not really living it for the approval of other people or for the fear of what other people think. Is that kind of the
Yeah, I mean,
what
I
you're
think that
describing?
is what the being a psychopath allows you to do.
Mhm.
I think, because I've watched people, you choose for the group often, which, like I said, evolutionary, that makes a lot of sense. But we're in the 21st century now. We're not living in those times where you got to hunt your own meals, and build your own house and fight your own battles and run and be cold and be hot and be hungry. The ease of achievement now is at a completely different level where we don't have to band together in such a way that we gotta diminish ourselves to help the group. I think we could all now, the wilderness is gone. To be cast out alone is like awesome. With sending to Hawaii, by myself or whatever. But I see, the people that I love not being able to choose in their own best interests. And I think that's how psychopathic mindset could help people.
It's interesting that you say this. I think this is like a really good way to put it, is that we don't need to diminish ourselves, in response to kind of societal pressures. And I think that's like a really positive way to say it. I think a lot of people are like, this is very antisocial, you know, these are my guesses at about the way people might react. But it's not necessarily yeah, it's antisocial, but it's not necessarily negative is maybe a good way to put it, because if you're diminishing yourself, like I have kind of a theory that we, especially maybe like 4 years ago or something, peak kind of Trump presidency in the United States, and like some concerns that people had, that people were like, you know, uh well, this was kind of a common complaint, like, I wish people'd say, "I wish that the racists would just go back to being, like, silently racist instead of, like, parading in the streets, with, like, their tiki torches or whatever." And this idea that, if anything, we need people to conform more, because here we have these people being kind of, outside the norm, they're racist and they're out about it.
Yeah.
And proud. And then this kind of idea, like, we need to, like, get these people to go back in the closet, like, life was better when they're back in the closet, such that people kind of felt like we need to, like, clamp down on some of the, like, freedoms that people are experiencing in our society, like this freedom to kind of be yourself and, like, not really concerned about what other people think. And I started seeing, like, articles, like think pieces being like, the upside of shaming people. Why we need to why we need to shame people, and, like, kind of like, how important that is to shame people, in order to kinda get, like, their compliance and the complicity,
Dude, that's
uh
enough for most people. A little disapproving look
Oh,
or a
yeah.
little negative comment, it's like, oh shit, I'm fucking up the group. They're not gonna like me. But that's why I try to
Yeah.
say in books, like they will like you. They're gonna respect you more if you're successful in what you do. I should probably caveat with that.
Yeah.
If you're just you know, people say don't do heroin and you do heroin and you turn into a heroin addict, they're not gonna respect your next choice either. But I
Yeah.
totally agree. That was a funny time of history. I always thought about like, I'm like, you ever heard like when I was in the military, they would always talk about, okay, you have to, if somebody's drowning, let's say, you make sure that you get yourself, a flotation device before you go and help that drowning person because they're
Yeah.
going to, and I thought it's funny that we can recognize that there, that you have to get yourself right before you can help somebody else. But not in, basically like any other non-life-saving situation. Like it's only like being taking care of yourself first is only reserved for like, and it's a counterintuitive thing that, it's like you think, oh no, you should, if you're really an empathetic person or whatever, you should run in and be selfless and save this person. But, obviously the smart and logical thing to do is to make sure that you're not also going to die so you don't have two people dead.
Yeah,
And I
and
just
it's
thought of,
it's interesting that they have to specifically instruct us to do that, like, on the plane, right? Like, every time we get on the
yeah,
plane, they're like, "Yeah, don't." please don't kind of put on somebody else's oxygen mask, put yours on first, because there is kind of, I think, this pressure or maybe instinct or whatever to do this. But I agree with you. Like, I think, and sometimes like Reaganomics, I'm sorry for all these like American references, but like this idea of like trickle down economics, where if the rich get richer, then it trickles down to the poor people. Like for some reason, that's gotten like pretty disparaged. In like, I think people are like that definitely didn't work, although it definitely does work. you
What
know,
other way does it work?
yeah, you have to have people who are, like, willing to take risks, and then, you have to have Henry Fords, you have to have, I'm not gonna say Rockefeller because, like, he was kinda more just lucky about was he the oil guy, Standard Oil guy? Some of this stuff is they were just lucky, they happened to be in an industry that ended up being immensely more, important because of the invention of the Henry Ford automobile. Well, Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, but he invented the factory process, I guess, of producing them efficiently, cheap and efficiently. But it's like a lot.
Not far from my house, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people want to be kind of down on like Elon Musk and stuff, or as if it just, anybody could have done these things. And the
That
truth
one
is
blows my
that
mind.
that they don't like him.
Dude, he's like the liberal savior. He's like a
Yes.
green, digital green energy dude. I can't believe it. Protecting free speech. I'm shocked. I'm always shocked when people don't like Elon Musk. I'm like, dude, he's like exactly who you would wish for.
Yeah. How do you want him to be different? But
Right.
I also think he's performing a role. Everybody performs a role. And if I think that we don't need to disempower people. I think it's actually the opposite, that all of our problems stem from people feeling too disempowered to the point where they feel weak against others, to the point where they feel like they need to tear people down. Whereas the reverse is actually probably better for society and for the individuals, is that everybody gets empowered. Everybody can feel empowered to make their choices and to live and operate in the world, um, in a way that kind of matches their proclivities, in a way that matches their personality, that like leads to this sense of fulfillment, of purpose, of fulfillment of their potential. Like this is kind of what we're aiming for, isn't it? It's not for people to just be like cogs in a machine, and then fearful cogs in a machine, that don't want to step out of line, because then we really are just like, well, I don't know, what's the point of that? I don't get that.
It's funny too how like empathy and morality has kind of been like weaponized in a way. It's like
Mm.
I feel like morality is so false. It's so shifting. It's so arbitrary, and nobody's ever sees themselves as the bad guy, anyways, in any situation. And one of my most hated takes I know always is that I feel like it's almost pointless to teach history in school
Mm.
because nobody sees themselves as the Nazi or that they could ever be the Nazi. It's like I would never do that. It's like you don't know what you would do, and that's why you probably would do that. And part of the reason why you do that is because you have not integrated your dark side into your light side. And I think that's one of the other major benefits of being a psychopath is that like I've been forced to find numerous, publicly acceptable ways to integrate my dark side into my life, or else just have a horrible life, And I think, but because of that, I've been able to reach sometimes some state of balance.
Balance with
That
what? With like your.
well between my intellectual and my instinctual side.
I
The
see.
instinctual side being the dark side, the intellectual side being the light side. Um, and through as a man, there's a deep seated violence that lives in all of us, and we're just taught like repression, repression, it's
Mm.
like sex. I think of it sometimes like if you have like, if you want to have sex, the only way to get rid of sexual desire is to have sex, not
Mm.
to try to stop wanting to have sex,
Uh-huh.
and push it further down, till it goes away, because it's not going to go away. It's a drive, and something is gonna pop. And I think that's what happens with violence in a lot of guys, especially, is like it just pops open because they've never fought. They've never played a violent contact sport. They never boxed or wrestled or fought MMA or played football or rugby or Australian rules football, and they're not accustomed. They have no pressure release valve, I guess,
Mm.
is the best way to say it. And that shit just comes out, unexpected, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, in this unexpected rage, I think a lot of times. But if you could just take the pressure off intermittently, and go commit the kind of assault that your soul needs, every now and again, I think you could get the balance that I'm talking about. I think that it's all intellectual. It's all in our heads. We're all in our heads, and so little in our bodies. And I think a major disservice done to us by like the intellectuals and the gurus and the religious people is telling us that enlightenment is a state of mind, when to me it's very clearly a state of being. A merge of the mind and the body. And I know they wish it would be all in your mind, because it'd be easier for them, that way, because that's intellectuals, that's strong mind, weak body, but I think it's not. I think to be a whole an enlightened person, you have to integrate what I think current 21st century society considers to be the darker parts of yourself.
Hmm.
Like Carl Jung said, your shadow.
Yeah, and it's interesting that so much of, at least it sounds like you're in your male experience, a lot of what society kind of deems to be like these dark aspects of you, the parts that you would need to repress, are fall in your kind of dichotomy of like the intellectual versus the instinctual. They're more instinctual. So society's
Yeah.
telling you like your instinctual stuff, which I mean, how much, you're right. How much can you change something that's instinctual? Like it's your lizard brain or whatever, right? It's
Right,
like when I
dude,
see a
it's you.
rat, I freak out, and it's not because I think rats are dangerous. It's because my lizard brain is like, whoa, like there's nothing almost I can do about it. Like a few seconds later, I can be like, calm down, a little bit, or like behave normally. But it's like in the moment, no, like I will have that reaction. And there's not really, it's the super egos really has nothing to do with it. It's not even like
It's
it's just kind
evolution
of,
to
it's
me.
your brain stem. Yeah. It's not even getting to like any cognition at all.
To me, it's a holdover from our evolutionary programming. Earth, God, decided that that we had roles, and just like the worker ants and the worker bees, have roles. And I think 21st century society might think it's a benevolent thing to do, to go and rescue the worker bee from his work and say,
Mm,
hey, dude, we got this machine, it does all the stuff that you used to do. It gets the honey, or it makes the honey, it gets the nectar, so you could just take a break, dude. Thank you for your service.
uh-huh.
Go move on to something else. But there's nothing else to move on to. It's like it's in there as deep as it possibly could be. And by trying to like rescue it from its responsibility, you ripped its purpose away from it. Like a
Yeah.
deep seated purpose that's not going to be, just because we've had guns in grocery stores for a couple hundred years doesn't mean that our violent, tendencies are going to just go away.
Right.
There, God made us the apex predator in a world where everything has to kill something and eat it to survive. And the only thing to kill and eat is each other.
Mm.
Not sure why it's set up like that, but it is. And we lived in that for unknown millions of years, and 200 years ago, 300 years ago, we kind of popped out into this modern world.
Mm.
But that's this much time compared to, and every incarnation that we were before human, if we came from the shrew or whatever, how many steps did we take in the chain before we became, what were we before we became people?
Yeah.
And so all that is never go. I mean, it could go away in that same gigantic ocean of time, if it gets moved to this side of the timeline. But no, that shit, it's so deep inside of us, and to just try and like pretend it doesn't exist basically only ensures, it's going to rise up and fuck your life up, or you're just going to live with this, you're going to live like the polar bears in the zoo, or like Tillicum, at SeaWorld, where you just have this longing for this ancient way of being that you might never even have lived, but something in you knows it exists. Like those SeaWorld orcas, like they know they're not supposed to be in there. They might not know what is out there, but they're living a repressed and fractured existence, completely out of balance. And I think another thing that's like kind of fucks up our understanding of it is that I don't know that we see ourselves as animals anymore.
Mm.
When like, I guess I don't know exactly how many years ago we were animals, but there was a time, where it was like, rising, every incremental advancement we made took us, towards civilization, took us away from nature. And I think our ancestors they were not enlightened because they were out of balance in the opposite way. They were all dark side, no light side. And for their enlightenment to come, they need to step, to move into the light. But we fucking shot way past it now. We're like all, and that was so that we need to come back to balance. And I think they did have a balance. And I think that some of our great ancestors were enlightened because they created civilization, and they created language that we still use, and math that we still use, and political systems that we still use, and we still don't know how we built the fucking pyramids. And the Mona Lisa is still the best picture. It's like how are they that much better than us when we had this kind of a head start on? And I think it's because we're so far out of balance. We're all in our heads, and we do this kind of like narrow, I shouldn't say narrow-minded, short-sighted stuff. I think they want to take all my masculinity and give it to you, and want to take all your femininity and give it to me, or half of your femininity and give it to me, so that you're kind of a guy and I'm kind of a girl, and you can go and work, and I can kind of be a dad, a working dad. I'm not afraid,
A working dad who works 2 jobs. You know that Reba show? No. I only see the memes. I've never seen the actual show, but it's like
talking about a working
he
dad.
sings. Yeah, well, that's the Reba TV show. Reba McEntire, the singer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her sitcom was the theme song is a working mom who works 2 jobs, who loves her kids and never stops. That's what they want to do, but you're a working dad.
A working mom is a fucking hero, and a working dad, a working man is expected. We're expected to work, and we need to work. It's part of, we need to work. And my wife's dad has passed, but he was one of those like tough steel generation dudes, and he saw the writing on the wall, that men don't want to be men anymore, and you got too many choices, and as a kid it's like a harsh thing to hear, but totally true. God. I think we've gone so far out of balance, and I think that the things that we're missing are in a lot of ways the old things. Sometimes I think about it like we're of nature, and we're of earth, and sometimes I think about it like we need a connection to nature. We need to do these natural things, I think, to be how we're meant to be. And I think of it sometimes like gravity. We're born to live in the Earth's gravitational force. Our bodies, are set up for it. Our circulation works in this level of gravity. We grow in this. Our strength is right for this level of gravity. And if you were to go to space, I think it's like, oh, I can like lift heavy things easily. This is good. Let's move to space. And then, you find out 3 months later that, your muscles atrophy and your blood doesn't fucking circulate because you're not where you're meant to be. And I think our separation from nature is very much analogous to that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Did you know that our natural circadian rhythm is longer than 24 hours? Yeah, it's like 25 hours or something. They've put people in a cave and then just let them like, sleep whenever they want to. And then after like however many weeks or something, they are in a cycle that's a 24-hour cycle. And people say like, how is that? Because there's a constant rub then. We always want to stay up. We want to stay up and not go to sleep when at the same time, because we're on a different circadian rhythm naturally than the rotation of the earth warrants. Sometimes religious people are like, that must mean that we came from a place that was slightly bigger than the earth or had like a slightly slower rotation, which would have
Yeah, I
been
mean,
the
it could have
difference.
rotated slower in the ancient past, I suppose. I don't.
Mm.
I shouldn't put that out there. I have no backing to understand how that would probably work.
I feel that rub all the time. I really do. I have sleep issues, and sleep is kind of like a constant not a constant thought, but like I just have so many things in my life that are structured to like have good sleep and fall asleep and whatever else. And I often think about that, like I'm constantly there's a rub, it's like fighting against swimming against the tide or something. And there are only so many kind of ways that we can swim against the tide before, our energy is exhausted, I guess. So if you're going to spend your energy, your time energy, fighting this particular little battle, then that's energy or time that you're not spending somewhere else.
You have trouble sleeping?
I do, yeah.
Do you smoke weed?
No.
Oh God, you smoke weed.
Really?
Yeah, dude, put you, you know, ease your mind a little bit, let you just zone right out, fall asleep.
Nice. Well, I do do like melatonin. Like I have a pretty good it's been a while since I've really struggled. I have like really good sleep hygiene. Like everything that they say, like don't ever do anything else in your bedroom, like the darkness, the like getting the sunlight in the morning. And I take melatonin and I take antihistamine to help me fall asleep. So now it's pretty good, but it is kind of interesting to think like I guess it's more historically that I've struggled with sleep. If I don't do those things, then yeah, I will struggle.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm so pumped on life. I don't even fall asleep. I just fucking pass out. I just go till I'm like. But I love to sleep. I set my whole life up to wake up late, and I had so many jobs that used to require me to wake up early. After I got out of the military, I was an air traffic controller for a little while,
Mhm.
and dude, I used to have to get up at 3 to make this 5 o'clock to be at the tower at 5, and I was like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm.
I was very lucky to meet my wife during that time and realize, oh my God, I'm wasting my fucking life. I gotta get out of here and do what I want to do, do what I want to do with my life. I'm gonna die soon, and she's gonna marry some other guy or something. I gotta get out.
That's interesting, but I think that's true. Like I've had jobs too, which like involved FaceTime, which involved, it's I would say that I have like I used to have more, but now it's probably like 20 good hours of like brain work every week, right? But they don't come during the hours of 9 to 5 necessarily. Like sometimes it's unpredictable. Like sometimes it comes earlier, sometimes it comes later, whatever. And these FaceTime jobs did not work well for me because I'd show up, I had like a bad brain. Like when I have a bad brain, I'm super grumpy. I can't really force myself to do anything. I don't really have enough willpower. So I mostly have to be, I think of it kind of like surfing. You can't force the wave to come. You have to just catch it when it comes.
A lot of
So the
metaphors
same.
in surfing.
Huh?
A lot of good surfing metaphors I feel like to be made in life.
Yes, because you're so dependent on the waves, which you have no control over. You just take them as they come or whatever. But I'm the same way about sleeping. It's like I have to like catch that wave and I can't interrupt it. Like I can't be like, "Oh, just 10 more minutes of this." Otherwise, that wave is gone and I have to wait for the next wave, which might, be
That
for like another
never.
6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Can you get shit done in between the waves?
To do what?
You get shit done in between the waves.
Sometimes I can. Sometimes I'm like my mind's too tired to actually do anything. And so it's like I'm just rewatching like old TV or something because there's not really anything I can do. I'm too tired to really feel like doing anything. But yeah, that I've just learned, just ride that wave when it comes or whatever. And I'm the same way because I agree with you. There's only, well, I think this is kind of an implicit in what you said. There's only so much willpower that you have. So if you're spending like all of your willpower to do something like wake up at a particular time when that's not kind of your natural kind of way of being, that's not naturally how you're kind of happiest, then and you've spent that willpower on that, and you don't have that willpower to spend on other things like your actual passions.
I never thought of it like that, but yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. Yeah, my will is exhausted just from hearing my alarm, waking up to my alarm clock. I used to just push it as far as I could. I'd wake up just with enough time to brush my teeth and get on my motorcycle and get.
Mhm.
I hated it. I worked a lot of like, I don't know, I've had a number of funny, you know, jobs that did require me up early, and I just thought, man, I'm done. I'm really done. And now I get up when I get up, go to the gym, go to work. Whenever I work till 2 or 3 or whatever, and come home and write and pass out. There's not enough
Nice.
hours, God, I
Well,
wish.
it's really interesting that you feel this way because I feel like not many people are wake up excited, to live their day. I think that's actually pretty rare. And there was a time, and I would say this, that when we say kind of successful sociopath or successful psychopath, in a way we mean the people who are like best at like just kind of clamping things down via willpower, right? And it takes so much kind of time, energy to mask, to kind of like rein in all these things, to like constantly be monitoring yourself, for impulsive decisions or whatever else. That I was like, I felt caged. I had caged myself. Yeah, but I felt caged. And so I started seeing a therapist. I was like, I don't want to keep living this way. But I feel like I can't understand how to be who I am in a world that requires me to be somebody else and not feel this way, right? So I started seeing a therapist, and I just totally lost my train of thought.
Was the therapist able to help you? Are you able to? Because you're probably smarter than your therapist, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, the therapist was actually really good. So remind me though, like, my therapist was, excited to wake up every day. He was, like, the only one at the time that I knew who was excited to wake up every day. So, remind me to get back to that, but I'll tell you, when it was funny, my tendency has always been, if I see something coming, I'll just cut to the chase. Like, I can see, like, with my girlfriend, it's like, "Oh, we're soul bonded. All right, cut to the chase. Let's just"
Yeah, yeah.
like, we
You
don't
know
need
me.
this long whatever. We don't need to kinda go through this process, like, we're already there or whatever. So that's what my tendency has been, and so my therapist, though, he wanted me to come up with my own kind of realizations, my own self-discoveries and stuff, and what my tendency was to do is try to kinda read his mind and be like, "Oh, he's trying to get me to do X. Yep, I'm already there. Here I am, X." So he had to, after a while, just start hiding his intentions.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he was really good at
If
it.
I'm
I
really
was
gonna
like,
open an eye.
yeah, he was great at it. It would be like 60 minutes of our session or whatever, and I'd be like, "Man, 60 minutes is already up," and he'd be like, "Okay, see you next week," and I'd be like, "We did nothing." We talked about nothing because he was just kinda, it seemed like small talk to me. It seemed like we didn't talk about anything, but eventually I realized he was, like, hiding, like, little Easter eggs into my subconscious, like, kind of
Have
planting these
you
ideas. But he had
have
to
you
do
thought
that, yeah, because my tendency was to just try to figure out what he wanted and then just be like, there you go. That
have you thought that as a psychopath, sociopath, that you would be a good therapist?
I bet I would be good at certain things, and I probably would am better than now than I would before. My tendency though, when I was, maybe like 10 years ago or something, would have been to be like, "Oh, your problem is that have daddy issues. Bam, done. All right. Another person solved."
Yeah.
you know?
I feel like it's somewhat easy. I found it's kind of somewhat easy to help people solve their emotional problems,
Oh,
because I'm
really?
looking at it clinically, cold.
I agree, and I think I'm really good at giving people advice, but it's kind of like, one thing I really respect about my therapist is I was just thinking about this last night too as I was, like, falling asleep, is he wanted me to not be dependent on him for, like, insights. He wanted me to learn how to come up with my own insights. So he came up You know,
Talk
he
himself out
was
of the job.
definitely, yeah, he was doing techniques on me, but he was also teaching me techniques to do that I could do on myself. And so that would be the thing that I would have struggled as a therapist 10 years ago is sure I can give you advice in this moment. I can give you money advice or whatever, but I think I wasn't good at kind of teaching people to be independent, to like understand money, you know, so that they could make their own choices in the future instead of like me constantly needing to be there to kind of maintain it, you know, like, no, don't do that with the money, you know, like, because that's frequently what would happen is somebody would follow my advice about one thing and then like a year later be complaining like, yeah, I did what you said, but this didn't happen. I'd be like, well, tell me what happened. And you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, why did you sell the stock or whatever? But like if you don't teach them how to kind of decide for themselves, then you'd have to be there constantly giving them the advice. And sometimes something's just a one and done. You know, you can be like, "Oh no, this solves your problem," and you know that's it, and they won't have that problem again. But often things I think are things that we experience more than once, and so that would be the kind of like good and bad about my therapy. I think.
I bet people fall in love with their therapists all the time. You know,
Really?
just somebody that listens to you and is like honestly trying to sort out your, cares, at least presents that they care and tries to sort out your emotional issues for you. You go talk to them. I imagine people probably fall in love slowly, with that person that helps them.
Yeah, that probably is true.
You
Yeah,
probably
but
got to
it's
keep a solid wall.
yeah, they have to learn too. I'm sure the ethical wall or whatever. Uh, yeah. But with my therapist though, like that was one thing that I was really jealous of him for is that he would wake up every day, you know, and have plenty of things that he wanted to do that he was motivated, naturally motivated to do. He wasn't using willpower. He clearly enjoyed his life. And that's what I always think about now is like, how is he the only person I knew in my life at that point that was currently happy, you know, was truly happy. So I think it's like an epidemic. I think it's awesome that you're trying to help people to kind of have what you have, which is because you feel that way, right? You wake up and you're excited to be
Totally.
doing what you're
Every day.
doing.
Yeah, love it. I really do. I can say for sure a huge part of that puzzle and something that softened me as a person to like an amount that I would never have thought is finding true love.
Mm.
You know, that gave me the perspective on things that maybe some people get from a child,
Oh,
that like there's something more important here, than me, maybe. At least, some motivation to reach, higher and further than I would have on my own. Because women are women are the society goes as women goes, in my opinion.
mm.
Women set the standards for society, and men work to exceed those standards for women because we love them, and want to have sex with them, basically. And in societies, I think where women don't have high standards,
Mm.
the societies are fucked up. And where women do have high standards, we built these amazing empires.
That's interesting. You know, like I do have like this belief, a shared belief with you probably, that like your standards are often the kind of bottleneck to your self-improvement. Like if you're okay with something or you're okay with your partner doing something or if you're you know you're okay with your boss doing something or if you're okay with society being some way, that's usually the bottleneck. That's kind of the problem is that it's actually one thing I found in music is probably a better way to kind of describe it in a way that people maybe be able to relate to is that what makes a bad musician different from a good musician is a bad musician will play something kind of poorly and be like, that's fine. That's good enough.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I know.
close enough, you know, close enough
Take
for
that.
hand grenades and horseshoes or whatever. But a good musician, like somebody who will end up this this is another thing I've kind of noticed with musicians. A lot of them will get to a certain point and then plateau, and they'll keep playing maybe for decades, but they won't actually improve. And I think it's because their standards are right there. They've gone to the place of their standards, and they stopped there. But if they had more exacting standards, like if they could actually learn to be more technically precise in their standards, their playing would eventually meet that. I think a really good example of this is in the United States. One of the best orchestras in the United States and the world is in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's I think Severance Hall is what it's called. But from what I've heard about this particular hall, I have never been, but I'd love to go. Is that when they were making all these big orchestra halls, like in the 19th century, not the 19th century, yeah, the 19th century, 19th and early 20th century, I guess. They, like every big city wanted a orchestra, and so you'd have to build your orchestra hall, but they did not really have a great understanding about acoustics. So for instance, the hall that they built for the New York Philharmonic had really bad acoustics. And
Oh,
the Philharmonic ended up having like a very muddy, heavy sound because of these bad acoustics,
that's funny.
because the hall could basically cover up, mistakes or whatever. So it didn't matter. Didn't matter if you played mistakes, like it did. People couldn't hear it. They couldn't kind of
The
hear
walls
well
will
enough.
eat, well, they'll eat them for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the Cleveland Hall, the Severance Hall, the hall had remarkable clarity, like pin drop, you could hear way over there. And so the orchestra was forced to play more cleanly because it was like every mistake, somebody could hear. So
It's like
I
they
think
have an
that,
exacting coach or whatever.
yes. So in your kind of theory, I guess, like the women are like they have the standard or whatever. And if they have low standards, then it's kind of like, well, who are we trying to impress? It reminds me of this phrase, my sister-in-law said her great grandmother used to say this, good enough for the girls we go with. So if somebody be like, I like your dress, she'd be like, good enough for the girls we go with.
That's funny. That's
But it's kind of like a true statement for everybody. Like, you'll just kind of rise to the level that's good enough for the people that you go with,
hmm
that like is your kind of level of society or something that you've kind of chosen, or you've adopted because you've been born into, or whatever that you find acceptable.
It seems like too people shy away from people that force high standards on you often.
Oh,
You know,
why do you think they do? Because
that's I guess I just to take it to a personal example, like I used to play professional football,
oh,
um,
cool.
and I had there's some coaches. Uh, I've almost never had a good coach, and but I did have I've have had some good coaches, and those are the ones that will point out your mistakes to you in real time at high volume in front of in bad tone in front of all your friends, and I think that like is hard to take.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of have a thick skin, I think, for most people to not hate this motherfucker that's demeaning you in on a thing you're trying your hardest at in front of all the people that you want to think you're to trust in you and think that you're good at that. um
Mhm.
so I think it's a real I think it's a real ego hit, and you got to have thick skin. And I think, not to keep talking about the male female relationship, but I think it's very helpful for men, and I think it's been not helpful to women to not be to treat them softer in a way, to not yell at them in poor tone and high volume in front of all their friends, and point out all their little tiny mistakes for fear of tears or whatever. And I think it's kind of it helps toughen dudes up, I think.
Mm.
But like I said, I think the reason is, to answer your question, that I think it's just it hurts I could see how it hurts your heart to get
Mm.
talked to like that and to be demeaned when you're trying your best. But you can't. But you need those high standards. And if somebody's like, well, that's good enough, then you're probably going to lose. Then everybody's going to have a bad time. Being on a losing football team.
Interesting. Okay. I can see that connection, that eventually you'll get kind of better at the thing. And sometimes I think, people are reluctant to criticize people, but I think it kind of does a disservice to whatever is the thing that you're doing. For instance,
Absolutely.
yeah, like music, if you're not willing to criticize a student and be like, you're playing out of tune, it's like a disservice to Beethoven. or whoever
Oh,
they're
dude, that's
playing.
a good one. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you want them to have, like, that respect for the thing so they feel passionate about doing it. Like, this is, like, a very deep subject matter that they could pour their whole heart and soul into and still never maybe, be the best, but it's just so rich. And its richness is manifested in the way that we have these high expectations for people that participate in this, is that you can get so good and that's why it's so easy to criticize is because nobody's really doing it perfectly. I think those are at least for me, the most exciting areas to be kind of interested in. I'm not really, like for instance, I drive, but I know I'm not anywhere near like a NASCAR driver of like my understanding or skill or physicality or anything, but I have some respect for NASCAR, even just, having people kind of criticize my driving by like flipping me off.
Instant feedback.
Like in some ways I'm like, okay, I get it. Yes, I am on the lower rung of driving. Like
Dude,
that helps me have more respect for the thing actually to be criticized about it.
to not try and, this is obviously a personal opinion, but I feel like to not try and live your life to the great, to not try and be as great as you can is a little bit disrespectful to God, for
Yeah. And to
inhabiting.
yourself for sure.
I mean, for your life, you were given a life, and to just kind of kick it, and be, modernly mediocre seems like a real fuck you, God.
And for what? Like, do you guys enjoy your lives that way? That's the real question because I am not convinced that anybody enjoys life when that's, what life is lived for. It's just to kind of get by.
I think it's just standards. Obviously America. Well, I won't even say that. Standards have gone down across the board. I think,
Hmm.
as tolerance rises, standards lower. You're supposed to tolerate shit that you wouldn't normally tolerate, and I think we're seeing that in the full-on decline of Western civilization. I hate to say it like that, but diminishing standards are not good, and I think we're seeing the results of them in a variety of ways, throughout the country, and it's
Yeah.
kind of sad, but I think people are so, oh good, I'm glad I remember this. People are so short-sighted. I think we go headlong into this like brave new world always without considering what the long-term consequences are, because we don't live in a long-term way. We just live for these 100 years hopefully. And I always kind of think of the way I always think of a dam. Like a dam is like a perfect example of how humans operate. It's like it's a great short-term idea. It benefits very few, but it fucks so many downstream, that you don't even think about. And eventually it will fail, and natural order will prevail. And I think a lot of just when I think of that, I think of dams a lot.
Hmm.
I, I think I can't remember where I was, but the first dam I saw, I remember thinking like, oh, but what about those people? That's fine for them, but what about everybody down there? I think it was China was trying to dam the Yangtze or something like that, and Lao was like, dude, we need it, or to the Mekong.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to dam the Mekong, and it's like I was in Laos and all these beautiful it's like these beautiful river islands, and all this river culture that they were so scared was going to be dried up basically because in another country they were going to shut off their water supply. And I do think that is a good analogy to the way we go about society planning and building. Not I don't think anybody's considering the worker bee in when, like I say, when they want to take my masculinity and give it to you. What's that really going to do to you? It's like, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Let's, we're so fucking smart. Let's try. Guys should be more like girls. Girls should be more like guys. Bigot or whatever. um, yeah, it's like I said at the beginning. I think our leaders are, kind of like a low conscious group that don't really have our best interest in mind. Just even the climate crisis. It's like, well, we have to increase energy costs to make people use less energy. It's like, well, what about the people that gotta use this energy? They're gonna freeze and die. That's fine for you. Like, what kind of a long-term plan is that?
Yeah.
You're gonna, for well, our people are gonna be okay. It just seems like the indicative of the short-term thinking that we have.
Hmm.
And I think it's really pulling ourselves down. That's not so much in the book, but that's just
Uh-huh.
my personal take on society. And I guess too, that's why I think maybe we're going to see a rise in religion soon, because like I said, standard setting is almost gone. It's almost like if you have your own standards as to what's acceptable, you're racist, or you're some kind of ist or ick, homophobic, or xenophobic or transphobic or racist or sexist or whatever. And I think that's just kind of be like, no, you shouldn't have those kind of standards. Shit, I forgot where I was going with that.
So you're talking about religion. So you were going to
Oh,
see an
so yeah, I think
increase in
so.
religion?
I think religion, on the back of that, I think religion will soon rise, because religion does have standards,
Mm.
and it does have traditions. And it does say this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And America has lost the ability to unite people as Americans, I think, unfortunately. I think a lot of people hate America that live in America. And we're no longer the melting pot. I think now, what did I hear? It was a salad bowl or whatever, where there's a tomato here and a lettuce here and a crouton. We all make this big salad, but I don't. I think people want to have their standards and they want to have their traditions, and they're being, kind of taken away. And your statues are getting trashed, and the old ways are just kind of seen as wrong. And I think the kind of like the politics have kind of become the new religion, and I don't think it's very fulfilling to people. But it has all the hallmarks of religion. There's dogma, and you got Saint Fauci, and Saint, Biden or Saint whoever, and some of these policies are unquestionable, and you can be exercised if canceled if you do not agree with them. And I think that's just going to push. Being told that you have to accept something, I think, makes people very angry, and that it's pushing them right into the arms of religion.
Oh, interesting. You think, yeah, religion's going to be the positive recipient of these people. That's interesting.
So, because you can't say I don't agree with that. I mean, you can say I don't agree with that, but the political correct, pearl clutching kind of time that we're living in, and like I said, kind of tries to veer you away from that. And I think for a lot of people that aren't psychopathic, because they do have a herd mentality, a slight nudge will get them back in line.
Yeah, I can
And
see that. So speaking of like these herd mentality people that aren't psychopathic, like, we've been talking a little bit about like there's certain kind of instinctive things that we kind of can't be trained out of. Or it's very difficult to train us out of, and it requires like, it's like damming this kind of natural force. But these, like, could you like, is this a valid criticism of your book, that these herd mentality people are not capable of thinking like a psychopath?
well, the book is basically about trying to understand your genetic, instinctual, and hormonal programming so that you can use it to
Oh,
escape the pitfalls. So, like, no, I don't think that they are, because so basically one of the things I say in the book is the quickest path to enlightenment is to pack up all your shit and leave, go anywhere else, so that you can escape the constant, like, eye of everybody that you know and love, who wants you to be a certain way because you've been that certain way since you were born, and you're that way because your parents were that way, and they're that way because their parents were that way, and on and on and on. And that's basically culture,
mhm, mhm.
being how the people before you were because they were that way,
Yeah.
essentially. I think, um, so no, I don't think they can. And I think, the first rule, it's not a rule or whatever, but the first suggestion is that you have to leave, because
Okay.
you are a herd animal and you are sane, and it is the sane response to split the difference and be congenial and try and please people. But if you just remove yourself from that situation, you don't have to do that anymore.
Hmm.
And I think it's kind of, it's like it's like a hack or whatever you could say.
Yeah, that's really
So,
interesting.
thank you. So the answer to that I would say is no, not via willpower, but yes, via some of these like things I try and lay out in the book.
Yeah. So do you know the trolley problem? The Okay, so you're on a bridge. There is a trolley or a train. There's a train coming towards you. Since you're on the bridge, you can see that there's like four people, that the trolley's on the wrong track or it's going to go on the wrong track. There are four people that are going to get hit and die. The trolley problem's not always like this, but yeah, for our purposes. And
Yeah.
then, so you can, if you push somebody off the bridge in front of you, it will like somehow shut everything down so those four people don't die. So you can choose to kill one person in order to save four. That's like the trolley problem, kind of. And people who are so you're like, okay, the rational answer is in any circumstance in which you can kill one person to save four, that makes sense, right? Okay. So in this, they have bilingual people. So they're English and Spanish bilingual people, and they've split them up into what is your native language versus what is your second acquired language. People, when they hear it, it doesn't matter if they're like native English or native Spanish speakers. They did this test, this experiment where they gave the trolley problem to people in their native language versus their non-native language. And people who got the trolley problem in their native language were much more likely to be irrational, to be like, no, there's no way I could possibly kill the one to save the four. People that heard it in their second language were much likely to be more rational and be like, yeah, kill the one to save the four. The idea kind of being like you have so much baggage associated with your native language, perhaps because your native language is when you first started experiencing your own emotional reactions. It's the language of your family, your past history, your entire childhood development, et cetera, et cetera, such that your native language is associated more with emotional reasoning, like your just kind of natural gut instinct. And your rational thought is more associated with the secondary language, mostly just because of the lack of all that baggage, that you don't have the same sort of baggage in your secondary language that you do. So when you're hearing it in the secondary language, your mind is not bringing along that baggage with it and hearing and interpreting and then making this decision about the trolley problem.
No, I never heard that.
Yeah.
What? So, wow, that's interesting. No, I never heard that. I guess I have heard, now that you say it, I have heard like some version of it, but it's always has to do with like babies and adults.
Okay. Babies
And I
and
remember
adults.
thinking
Mm.
like, well, no, it's okay to like, you kill the babies because they haven't built relationships yet.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
less valuable or whatever. And I remember thinking, like, why am I the only one that thinks that in class?
Yeah, no, no, no. I've heard that before too. Yeah. Versus killing an adult. Yeah, killing an adult has like all that history, all that knowledge. We've invested all this time in them. But most people are like, no, don't kill the baby, whereas killing the adult has like a lot of more implications, I guess, for it. So
The
yeah,
other thing,
so
oh,
you're
sorry.
kind of saying if people leave, then it's a little bit like learning the second language. It's like putting some distance
Oh,
between
yes,
them.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hell yeah. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Totally. Good. I did not know where we were going with that, but
Uh-huh.
definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You
Interesting.
can, because like I said, I feel like those little glares and those little offhanded comments are enough to keep most people in line because of the depth of our programming,
Yeah.
and like I said, it is the right thing to do. I know it, in my logical brain, I know that is the evolutionarily correct response, but
Yeah.
it's just not good for you, the individual, in 2023. And it doesn't have, we don't have to make the herd response in 2023. We got Social Security and healthcare and health insurance, all this shit that's not, it's not so major like it used to be, where,
Yeah.
they said being cast out is a death sentence, basically.
Yeah.
Um, I think another major problem is that people marry the wrong people, and
Okay.
that's everybody that I saw in relationship looks pretty miserable. It looks bad on people, really bad. And I think it's, again, goes back to genetic instinctual hormonal programming, that your hormones don't really care who you make your wife. Once they turn
Mm-hmm.
on, they just want you to find a woman,
Uh-huh.
and start, trying to satisfy her so that she will be comfortable enough to make a child, so that the species will continue. And that your hormones actually like kind of hinder you in the search for the right woman, because they're just like tractor beaming on to the girl next door. And whenever I hear people talk about they married their high school sweetheart or the girl next door, I'm like, that is fucking gross to me. It's like it's like turning on the radio, and being like, whatever song comes on, I'm sticking with it forever, and it could be Rihanna, you could get lucky. You could be Rihanna, but it's probably going to be fucking Demi Lovato or Miley Cyrus, or something, because that's like how most people are. And then you're stuck listening to Demi Lovato for your whole life. And if you want to stop listening to Demi Lovato, you have to give her half your shit and your kids, and pay her monthly. So it's like, do I stay miserable or become poor? That's a situation that a lot of dudes, a lot of women, a lot of people are in.
Yeah.
But when you marry the wrong person. So I dedicate a chapter to that, and without giving too much away, I guess, but I think the psychopathic answer to that is stay single till you're 30, get a dog, work on yourself, go to the gym, start a business, and give yourself like a $2,500 a month like prostitute budget. When you search for true love, to avoid, because true love is the most important thing I think that we have in life, and it's totally necessary to enlightenment, in my opinion. And I just see so many people, that hate their lives, wives that hate their husbands, husbands that hate their wives, and of course, a wife is going to hate their husband because he's not, trying to live his best life, because of all these other things that we talked about. And I know, you could speak, more for this, but I think women are concerned with constant improvement and advancement. I think I don't think my wife would leave me for Elon Musk right now, because I'm improving.
Okay.
I'm on an upward trajectory, despite that he is a greater man than I am. I'll beat his ass. I'm funnier. I'm better looking. I'm younger. He's way richer. He's way smarter. But I'm going like this. Not like this and not like this. So I don't think she has any reason to leave me right now. But I could understand if she ever did meet somebody better than me, and want to leave me. It's what would I say to her? Please settle for less. And that, my love for her drives me to be my best, because I want to keep her, and I think that's another good thing about being a psychopath, is the honesty that comes from a psychopath. I'm totally honest with her, and I could tell that first in our relationship she was kind of like, what? Like, why would you say that or whatever? And I'm like, well, I'm just being honest, and now it's not, we've been together long enough, it's not even a thing. I say dumb shit. I mean, not dumb shit, just ridiculous shit all the time, because I'm crazy. And, but I don't lie, and it's, and it's true. So I think she's able to accept my insanity, now. And she told me, she's like, you have people trained. She's like, you can live this way because you have, over all these years, you've trained people that if they press you, you're just going to dip, you're just going to bounce. And it's true. It's true. I can even tell, I can hear my mom, like soft step in, how to because she's like, he'll be out of here. I left, when I got back from the military, I had a phone, but I hate talking on the phone. It's just, I feel like, why should you get to choose how I spend my time? Such an interruption. I don't like it. And when I got back from the military, I didn't have one. And I was just, well, how are we going to, what if an accident? How are we going to talk to you? I'm like, just email me, I'll do Skype. And then finally my grandma, she's like, okay, Blair, I got you a phone. We don't have to tell anybody your number, but it's just for you and me to text, and eventually that number got out. And then people started telling, well, you're not answering your phone. And I'm like, I know I'm not answering my phone. I see your message, I'll call you back, I'm gonna call you back. And eventually the constant barrage of birthdays and holidays, weddings and funerals, fuck shit and bullshit pushed me right out the door. that all required my attendance. Each one somehow more important than the fucking last one. And I got to be there. And eventually, I was just like, I'm out. I'm out. And I just left for another 10 years. And I've recently come back and trying to be more present.
Uh-huh.
It's going okay. Like my wife
Yeah.
said, people, I do get a lot of leeway these days because I'll just disappear.
Well, it is true. Like, if people, it's kind of what you said at the beginning. Like, if you just care less, like, honestly, and people say this too, like in relationships and parenting, like, if you care more about the house being clean, then you will end up doing more of the cleaning of the house. There's like at a certain point, there are ways to kind of get around that, but you're right. If you're like able to kind of care less, especially care less what other people think about you, then suddenly you have so much more freedom than you ever thought that you had, probably. I can see that.
I never really talked to another person that will admit that they're psychopath. So can I ask you? Oh no, I just forgot my question. What were we just talking about?
We're talking about
It's something
like if you care less, like in relationships, somebody like cleaning and cares more about the
Oh
cleaning.
no, I totally lost it. God, I was so interested to know. I'll remember.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Parenting.
no shit, forget it. Now I'm looking dumb.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think of something. um, but yeah, there's a bluntness I think that comes with being a psychopath that I think is
Yeah.
appreciated by people. Like I say, if you're successful, and then after enough repetition, when they know that you're serious,
Hmm.
and honest, you know, I don't. I'm. I don't think lying is any kind of a trait of psychopathy really, or and I'm certainly not a like malevolent or person or anything like that. I want good if it can be. I just don't really care either way.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
interesting.
so. Yeah. So I tried. Like I said, I tried to write a book that would give practical steps, albeit them crazy, that to help you escape, kind of to help you hack your programming a little bit. To skirt it or just to understand it in a way that you can see like, okay, I'm doing this because I was born to do this, or and hopefully there is happiness and enlightenment for other people on the other side of that. But it is like you say, I don't think you can. If enlightenment was possible, living how and where you are right now, you already would be. But most people are not, nor is anybody they know, and I think it's because rule number one, you gotta get out of there.
Yeah.
Get out from where you are.
And I think that's one thing that is hard for people, because I think probably the one thing keeping people, like in their daily grind that they hate, is the thought of like family and not disappointing people. So that's kind of a big leap, because you're asking them to abandon like the only thing that feels good about their life currently, family, friends, these social ties.
Yep. Yep. Exactly what I was saying. But I think it pays off in such a every story about every great wise man always starts with them leaving,
Mm,
and then coming back once they have achieved whatever it was that they're trying to achieve. And that can be you as well, not you, but them.
yeah.
Anybody. Home is always home. That's what makes it home. You
Yeah.
can always come back. It's always going to be the same. And the people there are always the same, which is why you need to leave, because if you don't, you're going to become the same as those people as well. But I think it's so much easier to work on yourself without the constant judgments of other people, because when you start to act different from other people are around you, I think they kind of start to get concerned.
Mm.
I don't think they appreciate your quirkiness, or your artistic ability or your athletic ability or whatever. I think they just kind of want you to get married, have kids, and hate your life like they did, or else they'll be disappointed.
Yeah, it is true. Like they don't necessarily want the best for you. They want like what feels comfortable to them, whatever
Yes.
that is,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I've noticed that for sure. People want you to be how they want you to be, and certainly that's understandable. But I think it's just a kind of, like I say, kind of a little hack to just, well, hard left out of that, and
Yeah.
and go anywhere, anywhere. It doesn't even have to be nicer, than where you're at. It just has to be geographically someplace different. And perspective obviously is a gigantic part of enlightenment and just understanding. And even if you're born in New York City, and you lived in New York City your whole life, you don't have any perspective.
Yeah.
You're in the same place that you were born, and people who haven't left the city have more perspective, than those who haven't, and people who have left the state have more than left the city, and people who have left the country have more than who have left the state. And astronauts, have the broadest perspective of us all because that's how it fucking
Yes.
works. The further you go in any direction from your hometown, your perspective exponentially grows in that, to that equal to that distance.
Yeah.
And I think it would help a lot of people to, even just to, like we were talking about earlier, to not hate America or to not hate your city. You won't, till you get in another herd. I think it's hard to recognize that you were in a herd at all.
Yeah.
And then, oh, this is fucked up. Oh, that is fucked up. And then you can start to piece together the things that you actually want,
Yeah.
and what that's good for you, and look and come back to where you are and think, and change with better standards. This isn't right. This is no longer acceptable to me, whatever. And I think that goes far to, your overall happiness and hopefully enlightenment being the balance of the strength and the wisdom. And I think our ancestors achieved, a lot of our ancestors achieved enlightenment. Like I said, they were able, because they were able to do something that no other animal did, and basically like overcome nature, and escape. And no other animal is close to do that. I'm not saying no other animal has the chance. Another animal could, obviously monkeys, are pretty close or whatever, but another animal could overcome nature. We just made that like super clear delineation of nature civilization, and once we stepped over the line, it seems like we never looked back. And I think confronting those natural forces and pressures gave our ancestors the strength and wisdom that could be gotten from nature. And then as our intellect grew, we eventually reached a point of balance and broke free. But like I said, I think we're no longer enlightened because we shot well past it. I mean, some people are, sometimes or whatever. And there's also, there's enlightenment in momentary things, and orgasm, and being in the zone, in sports, when you're really just, when everything slows down and gets clearer, and time moves a little different, and you can see things with your brain and with your body, and those are fleeting instances. But I think the more you stack them up, the more you've lived in an enlightened state. If you can't get to to balance yourself on an everyday level, which obviously you can't, it's very, I think nobody can live in a state of constant enlightenment, or your heart would probably fucking explode. I think it's, the best we can hope is to sometimes get it, and then to try and hold on and understand so that we can get back there again.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody how they can get your book.
Oh man. It's on my website, a psychopath's guide to enlightenment.com. You can buy it right from there. I don't know if I'm going to put it on Amazon or not. As I'm looking into the money, of it, I think I'd rather just sell it on my website and, pay the shipping and free shipping. I'd say you can read it probably over 7 times in the bathroom. You put it, I'd say it's probably 7-8 times you'll be through it and have an entirely different outlook on life.
Nice. I like that. So that's like a little over a week of bathroom visits, unless you're a more frequent.
Yeah. I think, that's the Psychopath's Guide to Enlightenment. 7 don't guarantee,
All right, love it. And I'll put the link too in the description on YouTube.
Cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you coming to chat me. It's been so interesting. I'm so glad that somebody did a book like this, because again, I feel like people constantly are asking me. So I'd love to just kind of direct them to to your book. And maybe we'll have you on in a little bit to kind of get some of the feedback or some of the questions. People have follow-up questions like, okay, I get this, but whatever. That'd be good too if you're interested.
I appreciate it. Like I said, I do want to help people, but I'm crazy, so this is really the best I can offer.
I love it. Okay. We'll
And
chat you later.